Hi all, this is Yossi, and welcome back to my series on modding the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster games. Today we're going to be starting with something a little more advanced, kind of skipping ahead maybe in the proper queue and order for going from least complex to most complex. But I do know some folks on the modding Discord who have been wanting to do some map editing, and I happen to be doing a ton of map editing right now as my Final Fantasy 1 content restoration mod, which restores the bonus enemies and dungeons and such from the Dawn of Souls and PSP re-releases, has actually kind of been starting up again after about a year and a half of being kind of at a standstill. Since between me and some folks on Discord, especially GVDN on the Moogles and Mods Discord, we have actually figured out how to add new maps to the game, which means adding those bonus dungeons is now in fact possible. So I've been doing a bunch of map modding, and there are some other folks who are interested in it, and so I figured since I'm very much in practice with that right now, today would be a good day to do a tutorial on how to edit maps for the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster. So, first things first, you will need a piece of software called Tiled, and I'll see if I can get the address of that linked in in the description below. So, Tiled is going to be, it is the software that the creators of the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster used to create their maps. They clearly had some, additional plugins or tools added because you can do more. They have more info on their maps than tiled maps do by default. But what it does mean is that we can, in fact, edit maps very, very easily using this software. So we'll create a brand new Magicite mod for this. Let's call it World Map Edit Mod. And in this mod, we will, in fact, be editing the world map of the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster, the first one. So, as usual with Magicite mods, the first step is to go to Magicite Export, which is the files that have been exported by Magicite, and find the directory that you are going to want to be editing files from in your chosen mod. In this case, since we're editing the world map, that is going to be map _ 10010. For most of the Pixel Remasters, your 1 or 10,000 series maps are going to be your world maps. Final Fantasy 1 just has the one world map, but others do have more. For example, Final Fantasy 3 has the Floating Continent world map, and the Sunken Continent world map, and then the regular post-flood world map. You have Final Fantasy 4, 5, 6 all have multiple world maps. But this one, there's just the one. So it's really, really simple. For future reference, the 200 ones tend to be like towns and other places, towns, castles, places where you're not likely to run into enemies too often. And then the 300 level tend to be dungeons. 400 level, or I guess 40,000 level technically, tends to be in, at least in Final Fantasy 1, the kind of maps that you use for like special events. So for example, the prologue, where it shows you, the earth rotting, that is one of the special event maps from that. So we will take our world map directory, map 10010, and then we will paste that into our new world map edit mod. So again, as usual, we have our, we kind of click down through our hierarchy to get to our actual files. There is a directory with the name of, well, there are two directories with the name of the map. The first one has the tile set for the map. So this is going to be the image tiles that are used to create the map. It'll also have a sprite data file, and a package.json, which will tell it basically what files to draw on for this map. First of all, delete the sprite data. That is the first step. As Magicite currently stands, if you're editing any of the first 4 Final Fantasy Pixel Remasters, leaving that sprite data in there will completely mess up your import. Final Fantasy V and Final Fantasy VI do not have that issue from what I understand, but Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, and 4 do. So since this is Final Fantasy 1, delete that so we don't run into issues and then wonder why everything is messing up when we try to implement things. So that's the sort of outer map, 100 or 10,010. Then there's another directory with the same name, which we go into, and there's a bunch of JSON files. Attribute, collision, and count grid, and entity default, a bunch of ones beginning with ev and sc, and then tile map and transportation. A lot of these we are not going to be doing anything with right now. We are definitely not going to be doing any kind of script editing because that is way more complex. It's still not something I fully understand. So scripts and events, we're just kind of not going to bother with today. The maps that we are going to maybe spend some time on today are, first of all, we may want entity default.json, and we are definitely going to want tile map and probably transportation. So tile map is going to be the actual tile map of your map. So it's what tells, the software, here are the tiles we're using, and they're spaced out in these specific positions. They're on these layers so that things can, show properly in front of other things. And so that is the really main file for the map. Transportation.json is something very similar in that it has pretty much a value for each square of the map. The big difference with transportation is it has to do with whether a square is passable and by what. So can you traverse it by walking on it? Can you traverse it via canoe in Final Fantasy 1? Can you land an airship on it? Those sorts of things. Or is it one of those things you cannot, walk or sail onto? A sailing ship, that's the other big one. So that basically says, here is how you can traverse this tile on the map. Or not traverse it. And then finally, entity default.json has a ton of stuff that's on the world map, including any locations for it tells you where the squares are, that when you walk on those squares, you enter the town or city or castle that you're supposed to be entering. It has the teleport points. So when you cast teleport in a dungeon or an area and it takes you back out to the world map, where does it take you? It sets those kind of values as well. So it has a ton of stuff. For non-world maps, entity default also I'll often have your NPCs. It'll have, any kind of objects that appear on the map. So yes, there's a ton of stuff that can go in that entity default.json. I don't think we're actually going to be editing that stuff today, because right now we're just going to maybe edit it kind of cosmetically and potentially also change a few values for things that are traversable. So we will leave out entity.json. We will only be editing tile map and transportation. So our first step is going to be to go into tiled, open a file, and then we are going to want to go into our mod directory and open our default vanilla tile map. And what it will do is it will open the map just fine, but then it will give you an error message that says, we can't find this tile set. When that happens, click on the sort of warning, click open tile set, and then it will go to a different error message. Click on it again, click locate file, and then that will take you back to where you opened the map. Go one above, and then open your map tile set. So in this case, it's map underscore 10,010.ping. So click on that, and you have your tile set. Now we look at our world map, and the shapes look right, but something looks a little off. And we may be able to find what the problem is if we zoom in. And everything looks really messed up. So the problem with this is that for some reason, the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster uses its it takes the map tile set and has it upside down. So it needs to be upside down for use in the game, but it needs to be right side up to work in tiled. So what we're going to do is we will open specifically the file, that ping file. So I'm opening it in GIMP, which is a free kind of Photoshop stand-in. So freely available, I think for both Windows and Mac, so it should be available if you don't have access to Photoshop or something like this. And then I'll go to Image, Transform, and flip it vertically. And then I will overwrite it. And then we click on our map, and suddenly it all looks good, because now it is showing exactly what we want it to show. And we can, like scroll around the map, so you can kind of see there's a bunch of stuff going on. You may also notice that there's not any water, that all of the spaces that there would be water are in fact like kind of a gray background color. That's because although previous versions of the Final Fantasy games did use like water tiles, and you can actually see the remnants of those in this tile set here, like these kind of water tiles. They are in fact not actually what the Pixel Remaster version uses. The fact that they're here means at some point they did, or at least they used the Game Boy Advance tile set as the basis. But the way it actually handles this is with a special water controller that creates a water effect that does your water. So that means don't worry about water for now. Just don't worry about it. Now, the thing to keep in mind when we have this world map is we do have a set of layers. So there's near background layer, far background layer. I've never been quite sure what those are. I've never really looked into them. But the things you'll need to actually edit the map are going to be your upper layer, your ground layer, and your bottom layer. So upper layer is going to generally have things that are going to go in front of just about everything. So, for example, like you can kind of see, it's maybe a little hard to tell. Let's zoom in. So you can kind of see when you vanish the upper layer, some of those shoreline bits disappear. I'm not quite sure why they put those specifically on the upper layer, but because you can't walk over them, so it doesn't really make a difference where they are. But I guess it probably has to do with the way they did the shoreline and the water effects. Most of the things you're going to find are not on the upper layer. They're on the other two. The ground layer is going to be kind of the things that could potentially, that are going to be very easy for your character to interact with, like your cave entrances and your forests, anything where there's kind of edges that you might be interacting with. And the bottom layer tends to be, the other stuff. Just kind of the very basic terrain with nothing super, exciting going on there. So yes, if you take out the bottom layer, you're going to get mostly like weird edge places, and then also things like your forests and your cave entrances and your like port. If you also keep in mind that if you have animated tiles on your map, it will show those. So here we do have the animated tile of the what happens when you do your, whatchamacallit, when you blew up the canal with the nitro powder. And so it gives you the animation that you see in game when that, little land bridge crumbles and falls. But any other animations you may have in this overworld map are going to display there, barring anything that is like water. I can't immediately think of any other animations that are there in the world map. So I think that one may actually be it, that kind of destruction. I guess we also maybe get the changing. Yes, we also get an animation that we get in the opening where the area around the earth cave goes from green to brown as it says the earth rots. So that is another animation that we do get. But beyond that, I don't think we get a ton of other animations on the world map. So no real worries. As you may notice, the towns appear on this just fine for the most part. But what don't appear, the other animation is the bridge, because of course, you start out with it broken and then eventually it is fixed. You may notice that Castle Cornelia isn't there. Areas like the Chaos Shrine are not there. You might call it the Temple of Fiends, which was the original NES name for it. Let's see, like the Mirage Tower is not there in the middle of the desert. And that's because those are currently handled as map objects rather than actual parts of the map. So you can edit those by, editing the map objects instead, the same way you would edit like an NPC. And they appear in that entity.json on the world map as well. Interestingly, the volcano doesn't. Like it's just remains flat, I guess. I think the reason with those is because they do rise high. And Elf Castle's the same. It's so that then when you use the airship and like things kind of angle, those can show properly like upright rather than looking flat. I guess they figure it's fine for the towns to look flat, but the castles shouldn't look flat. So, that's the sort of general guide to the world map on at its most basic level. Now, the tile set that we have, and you can click on this to edit the tile set to see it. And then we can obviously zoom in if we want to. So this has all of the tiles that we might need, including some that are not used in the Pixel Remaster, but do show that this used another version, presumably the Game Boy Advance version, for its basis. So things like the water tiles, the whirlpool graphic, which is not used in the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster, but is a holdover from the Game Boy Advance version where the whirlpool animation was used for the entrance to the Life Spring Grotto, I believe was the dungeon. That is still in there, which again tells you that this was originally using some version of this that did have the bonus content that I'm currently trying to put back in. So as you can see, some of these are full tiles, others are partial tiles. So things like this is clearly, it goes and over tiles under. That's why there's the gray background, is it means that, you can put that on top, and it will, instead of having to have a tile for every possible iteration of the green background and these mountains on top, you can just have the mountains on top as a separate tile with a clear background, a transparent background, and then put it over whatever, ground tiles you might want to put it on. So, again, we're not going to do anything super fancy. We're not going to mess with the animations, although that is actually also in tilemap.json. And we're not going to do anything, again, super fancy with it. We're just going to do a little bit of editing. So, let's say, this is something that I actually just did. Let's say we want to create a new dungeon entrance. This is what I did for the Earth Gift Shrine dungeon in my content restoration mod. So how would we do that? First of all, remember the ground layer is where we have our cave entrances. So what we will do is we will find our cave entrance tile. Here we go. Right here. Make sure it looks right. There we go. And then we just make sure we have the correct tile selected. Make sure we have the correct stamp brush selected. You can also use the bucket fill tool if you need to fill things with bucket, like mass fill. I tend to only ever use the stamp and the eraser unless I'm trying to do like a background, black background or something for a map. You can select and copy and paste things, or I don't tend to do those though. So, stamp brush, ground layer, we've got the tool we need, we've got the layer we want, and we've got our tile picked, which is the entrance. So then we just click on where we want that entrance to go, and voila, we now have a cave entrance. let's say we want to also make one of the Cornelia towns one of the other colors. Like we have gray towns, we have blue towns. How about we use one of those? How about we make Cornelia gray? Give it some gray graphics as well. Let's see. So we'll leave some red, just enough that we know it's okay. So Cornelia is now gray and red rather than just red. That's a nice way for a new game to show us that yes, in fact, we are exactly where we need to be and our changes have been made. So this is our edited map. Some changes to Cornelia Town pictures or visuals, and then the addition of a new cave entrance, which is going to necessitate editing that transportation.json, because currently the game still thinks this is a mountain tile, and so you cannot actually walk into it. That obviously is a bit of a problem. So what we want to do now is we'll save as. Do not save over your old tile map. I create an extra called tile map edited. The reason I do this is because this will save with the default tile map with the default tiled formatting. Pixel Remaster uses some tile formatting that is not default. That is specifically kind of was probably unique to their specific game creation version that they used. They probably had plugins to do extra layers or something. So we now have our default vanilla version, tilemap.json, which is unedited. And then we have our edited version, tilemap edited, and that is the version that has our new visual graphics on it. So now we will open both of these in a text editor. I use Notepad++. So first of all, you'll notice that our nicely edited tile map has things nicely formatted. Like it's JSON, you can see kind of exactly how it's set up, and it's great. Our vanilla one does not. It has no spacing whatsoever. Makes for a smaller file, but it also makes it nigh impossible to actually read. So this is where it can be really helpful to use some kind of JSON formatter. So I'll Control A to select all and then copy. And then I will open a JSON formatter. I'm using jasonformatter.org. There are a ton out there. There's quite a few free tools that will let you kind of properly format your JSON and make sure it's valid JSON and such. So what I'll do is I will click that and paste it. And then the nicely formatted JSON comes out on the right side. Keep in mind that depending on the file and its size, this may show up it may take a little while for it to show up on the right side, nicely formatted. This actually went pretty fast, even though it's a very big file, because it is the first time. This is not the first time I did it. It probably still has it in cached memory. So we'll now replace the shittily formatted JSON with the nicely formatted JSON that we got off our JSON formatter, and then save. This, we didn't actually change anything on it. We just changed the formatting, so that is fine to save over it. Now our maps are going to look fairly similar to each other, and that is kind of what we want, actually. Now, as you can see, we have it gets the water from watercontroller.map 1010 or 10,010 watercontroller.ping. Again, we're not messing with the water controller, but it's nice to know, if you need to somehow edit the water, that's where it's going to be. And if you do want to edit the colors of the water in your water controller, you can do it that way, I believe. So we'll skip the FarBG layer, which is, okay, that's what the water controller is. So that's why I haven't looked at the FarBG layer, but it's the water layer. Then we'll skip down to the NearBG layer, and that we can also skip. I think that's probably going to be the skybox or something. Or no, actually, maybe is there a skybox in Final Fantasy 1 when you are flying? I don't remember. But regardless, it's going to be something we don't need. Then we start getting to a layer that actually is made up of tiles, which, as you can tell, is really, really inconvenient because our JSON formatter, by default, is putting all of these things on their own line because they're separated with a comma, which is great, except there are a shit ton of tiles on that map. So let's go down to the bottom of it. And as you can tell, there are a lot of tiles on this layer. So you can see why having it on each one on its own line is not great. And I think I've actually skipped one. No, okay. I was trying to shortcut us. Shortcuts, sadly, do not always work. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back up to the beginning of this tile layer. And we are going to highlight at the beginning of the line that starts with data in quotes. And then we will page down. And we will hold page down, and we are going to go a long ways. Because, again, every tile on the map has its own line here. And there are, it's a big map, so there are a lot of tiles. The big thing you want to do is maybe just keep an eye out as you're scrolling down. There will be a few lines that are not a tile value. They, in fact, mark the end of this map and the beginning of the next one. So, come on. Come on. Again, like I said, there's a lot of tiles here. But just keep an eye out when you have longer lines, because those longer lines that are longer than just like the, 3 or 4 numbers of the data set are going to signify that it's the end of that map and the beginning of the next one. Actually, probably should not have started with this layer anyway, because this is the upper layer, which we did not actually make any edits to. So we are not actually I can just not highlight it then, because we don't need it. We're just trying to get to the bottom of it so we can get to the ground layer, which we did edit. So whoops, there we go. I saw it. There we go. Oh, bottom layer. Is the bottom layer the first one? You can tell it's even in our edited tile map.json, those are still not small layers. Okay, the first one is the bottom layer, which is not what we're doing. So here, we want that middle layer. And as it happens, that is what we have next. So after the bottom layer, we have the ground layer. And so we will just scroll all the way down until we get to the bottom of the ground layer. And again, it's going to be a ways. It's going to take a little while. So the reason I'm doing this is because even though the edited tile map does not necessarily give you what you want as far as all things you'll need, the vanilla one does. So your best bet is, in fact, editing it and then just copying and pasting the tile changed layer from your map into the original, because that will get you where you need to be. And it will also mean it will still work properly in-game as the map as it should. Come on. Anytime now. Aha. There we go. There we go. So that brings us to the bottom of our ground layer. So let's just go to the end of the data. Basically, just go to the end of the last of the tile bits, the one that does not have a comma after it. And keep that highlighted. Then we will go over to tile.editor.json, and we'll start again with data. And we will go down. We have a ways to go, but not... Okay, we do still have a ways to go. Even with things that are nicely formatted and not one to a line. Because these are big maps. Okay, and then we go to the bottom of our ground layer. And again, we will go to the end of our 0, which is where we have no... We could also just go to the brackets, but it's maybe easier just go to the bracket there, copy, add the bracket and comma there, and now we paste. And that'll place our edited layer in place of our unedited layer, which will also copy over the existing, whatchamacallit, the existing, like the new setup where it's not all on one line, which is definitely going to be better as far as, like, if you do need to make more edits, it's a lot faster to highlight those lines than, the originals. So let's now save that ground layer in our original JSON, or in the original tilemap.json. And now our change has been made. So now let us go into our game to see whether it works. Don't forget to go into your image editing software and flip your images back upside down and overwrite them, because if you do go in with it as is, your map is going to look messed up. So now we currently have this map that uses the vanilla tile. As you can see, it'll look like this in game, because again, it'll be upside down, which is probably not the way you want it to look. So now let us go into our Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster and see whether it is working. So yes, this is really the basic way to edit a map. If all you're editing is things that don't actually make a huge difference in terms of mobility, you can pretty much end there. If you want to turn, like a standard, grass into a forest. Okay, so as we can see, our visuals did change, and that is what we want. We now have our gray and red Cornelia Town. Let's see. Okay, counters off. Let's see whether our other entrance is here. So it is. This is our entrance for the Earthgift Shrine. Unfortunately, we cannot actually enter that space because the game still thinks it's a mountain. So, everything works visually, but it's not working, like, traversal-wise. Thankfully, we can fix that pretty easily. Or maybe not super easily, but there are ways to fix it. So let's go back to our map directory, and we can open transportation.json. And as you can see, it is, again, a massive mess. This, we are not going to want to re-JSON it, I think. And that is because it's very difficult to figure out what square it is that we want to edit. And the easiest way to do that, as far as I'm concerned, is let's go back into tiled, flip our map again so it displays properly. So, we have a map, and that is what we want. Can we just... Okay. So what we need to do now is figure out how to find this square. And the way I would say to do it is to figure out basically the traversables around it on this row, and then search for that row. So for example, the squares on either side of it are not traversable because they're mountains, you can't walk onto them. And then to the left of that, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 squares that are not traversable. So let's make a note that we have 7 non-traversable squares, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, plus the 3 here. Or maybe we'll have it be, 8 plus 2, just so that we kind of remember where our 1 is. Then we have 1, 2, okay, hang on, let's scroll over. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that are traversable, followed by 3 that are not. So what this tells us is that, and I always forget whether in transportation 1 means an obstacle, and I think it's 0 means there is no obstacle there, and 1 means there is. So the way we would do this to find where this spot is we would do 10 ones in a row. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then we have 6 squares that are traversable. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then 3 that are not. So let's see whether we may need to add more if we don't have... so how many results like this are there in here? Okay, so there are a few. So we are going to need to narrow things down more. So we can definitely... since you can't walk on water, we can definitely maybe add another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 squares at the beginning that we cannot land on because they're water. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so at least 10. So what this means is we can add 9 more that you cannot go on first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then 10 that you can. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that the longer your string of zeros and ones is, the more likely it is that it will be unique. And that will find you the exact spot you need. So that first time we ran into a bunch of things that met our requirement. Here there is just the one spot. So now we know that we are exactly where we want to be. And specifically what we want here is, whoops. Now we found our spot. We want this spot right here to be a 0. Because what we want is, here's that edge here, that edge of 3, and basically that corresponds with, whoops, here. So we have these 3 here, followed by a bunch that are traversable. And that is going to be these 3, and the middle of those is our square for our tile. So what we want to do is take that 1 and turn it into a 0. So we will find that 1 in our string over here, which will be, let's see, there's the 0, there's the 1. So we will take this 1 and replace it with a 0 and save. This is why we don't put it in the JSON formatter, because if we do that, it'll put each thing with a comma on its own line, and that's, I think, may make it difficult or impossible to do this kind of search. So, now that we've made that change, let us once again reverse our file, our image, so that things will display properly in game. And let's check it out. And this should make that square now traversable. It won't take us to a location. For that, you will need to actually create a go-to map, I believe, in entity.json, which is more complicated than we have time to do here. But this at least will help you do kind of superficial map editing as far as making things look differently and making sure that you have the right kind of squares for them. And obviously, like, since these... Oh, whoops. let's flee. Forgot to skip battles. Turn them off. Alright. So again, like, this just cosmetically changes things. If you go into the gray ones, they'll still take you to Cornelia just as it was. Like, the map triggers are the same, it just looks slightly different. But if we go up to our cave square, now we should be able to go into that square. And indeed, we now can. The ones to each side of it are still not passable, but that one we can now go into. So if we now created a go-to map and trigger in our entity JSON at this spot, and chose a map, walking on that would then transport us to wherever that map is. So yes, that is kind of the super basic map editing. Again, there's a lot more complicated stuff you can do. You can change, you can add animation to tiles, you can create new tiles, you can do all kinds of stuff. But for now, just being able to work with the tiles that are there and change whether tiles are passable or not is really what this tutorial was about. So hopefully you found this helpful. Okay, so yes, that is basically our tutorial. Just how to edit your map tiles and how to then make sure that if you edit things that are traversable and should not be, or edit things that should not be and are, you can fix those. So yeah, that is everything for this. And hopefully you found it useful. That is it for today. I will be back with future tutorials at some future point. But for now, this is Yossi signing off. Bye.